If you thought that the Microsoft response to the FTC about the Activision Blizzard merger was spicy, well, then you have definitely not read what Activision had to say to the FTC, because they really let the FTC have it. They are not happy that the lawsuit has been filed by the FTC to block this merger, and they had some spicy things to say that we're going to read right now. Diving right into it, basically, we're going to start with the introduction about the statements that Activision wanted to make. So it's going to be a little bit of a longer video. Buckle up, everybody. Here's what Activision had to say to the FTC. This merger will benefit gamers, employees, and competition globally. Yet the FTC persists in its ideologically fueled effort to ignore settled law and what decades of experience tells us is good for competition. That is the first two sentences. Those are the first two sentences. They are not happy. The FTC's theory rests on the entirely unfounded assumption that after acquiring Activision, Microsoft's Xbox division, Xbox, will withhold or degrade other gaming platforms' access to Call of Duty games, harming Xbox's competitors in three alleged relevant markets. This theory fails on three principled grounds. One, Xbox lacks the ability, let alone the incentive, to foreclose its competitors from Call of Duty. The FTC's conclusionary allegations to the contrary ignore all available real-world evidence, resting instead on a purely hypothetical but-for world that has no basis in reality. I think we've talked about this before on the channel. Sony makes something like $1.5 billion on Call of Duty. If that's what Sony is making and reporting that they make for the Call of Duty franchise, imagine how much Activision has been making from Call of Duty being available on PlayStation. I put a poll out there on Twitter and I said, would you rather make Call of Duty exclusive or have all of your competitors pay you at least $1 billion a year? That's why it doesn't make logical sense. Microsoft wants their competitors to have Call of Duty to the point that they have 10-year contracts out to everyone who's willing to sign them. And Gabe Newell over at Steam and Valve basically said, we don't need to sign this. You would be crazy to pull it off of Steam because we're giving you tons of money. Anyway, continuing on. 2, the FTC's theory assumes that a gaming platform cannot succeed without Call of Duty. The notion that a single game or franchise is the key to the continued competitive vigor in the highly dynamic video game industry is facially absurd and contradicted by the plain facts. And the FTC's alleged relevant markets are made up for this litigation and are entirely nonsensical. One of the things that the FTC really failed to do was define a lot of the terms that they were utilizing. They wrote it in a way, and the arguments that we've seen from Activision and Microsoft are, you wrote this in a way where you're just kind of making up terms and not defining them. And when you're talking about legality of a situation, obviously a lawyer is going to say, you didn't even define what this means. So we can't agree to it. And that's why in the middle of the Microsoft one, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch the Microsoft video because we cover off on that. They just deny everything in the middle, basically, because they can't even agree to something when the terms aren't defined. Anyway, the complaint and the misstatements of fact and the misapplications of the law reflected therein do not pass muster. First, taking Call of Duty exclusive would be disastrous for Xbox. I outlined why earlier. If Xbox withheld Call of Duty from Sony's PlayStation or other platforms that compete with Xbox, Xbox would immediately forego billions of dollars in lost game sales and cleave off a massive portion of the gamers that Activision has worked so hard to attract and retain. Everybody talks about Colin Moriarty and what he had to say about how heinous and bad it would be if Microsoft did that. Well, they're not going to do that because it would be stupid. Again, you want your competitors giving you money, and that's what they did with Minecraft. They allowed Minecraft to come to more platforms, and they made more profit because of that. And sure, those platforms make money also. That seems good, doesn't it? It sure does to me. Not only would Xbox lose players on those platforms, but this strategy would also destroy the value of the game to Xbox owners. Call of Duty's appeal is in large part due to the investments that Activision has made to allow gamers to play at any time and with anyone they choose, regardless of the platform they or their friends use. Crossplay is a big deal. That's why you can get into matches so quick. That's why I can probably actually get a kill when I play on PC versus the console players who are still figuring out how to use a controller in Call of Duty Modern Warfare or Warzone. Sorry. So yeah, you want crossplay to remain intact. Withholding or degrading Call of Duty on PlayStation would eliminate this ability to crossplay and destroy the broad Call of Duty community that drives the game's success. The player backlash for making the Call of Duty franchise Xbox exclusive would be devastating. And I do think if they would have made, in hindsight, I do think if they would have made Call of Duty exclusive, Xbox fans would have been happy. But I think it could have killed the franchise. I think them doing that would have been really, really bad for Call of Duty as a whole. Like, sure, it would still be available on PC, but like not release. Since then, we know they're going to be releasing it on Nintendo, whatever Nintendo is doing. It's going to remain on PlayStation. Like, they have no reason to withdraw it from those platforms. It would destroy the trust Xbox has fostered with gamers, leading frustrated gamers to vote with their wallets and shift their attention away from Xbox offerings. Here's one thing. I don't think anybody votes with their wallets. I have advocated for people to spend less money on microtransactions if they don't want to see that trend continue. And everybody makes a big, loud hubbub about a lot of things that happen in the industry. And you know what? Those games still have record-breaking sales every year. Everybody talks about how much they hate Call of Duty all of the time. And then all of a sudden Xbox wants to buy it and it's a big deal. Okay, like how come you didn't care about it? And like, how come microtransactions are such a bad thing, but it's still record-breaking profits? Like, you can not like something, but the thing, I disagree with Activision here. Nobody would vote with their wallets. They would eventually move over to Xbox, etc. But I've seen time and time again, people not vote with their wallets and instead vote against what they say would be the best interest, or at least the majority does. I don't spend money on microtransactions. I stopped after Destiny 1 did this like mass thing, and I'm like, I'm never doing another microtransaction again. Haven't bought a single thing. Haven't bought a single thing in all of Destiny 2, and I'll continue not to. I think the closest I get to that is like purchasing the battle passes in Halo Infinite. I think that's as close as I get. And companies have gotten really smart about how they offer those to people. Anyway, continuing on. They're not going to make it exclusive is the long story. In a world where nearly unlimited gaming alternatives, making Call of Duty exclusive is not a plausible outcome. While these incentives render the FTC's foreclosure strategy wholly implausible, Xbox has additionally already guaranteed that Call of Duty will be widely available well into the future by entering into a 10-year agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to the Nintendo Switch and offering a 10-year commitment to Valve to keep Call of Duty available on Valve's Steam store. Xbox has publicly offered the same 10-year commitment to Sony, and Bloomberg reports that includes PlayStation Plus day-and-date releases. These commitments directly undermine the FTC's supposed concerns and provide complete protection against its alleged theories of harm. For some reason, the FTC refuses to engage on these proposals other than to accuse Xbox in its complaint of breaking past promises to the European Commission, an allegation that the European Commission itself publicly refuted the next day. Activision gets so spicy in this letter. We're 9 minutes in, and if you're still watching, I would love you to consider subscribing. I actually wrote a little something, and if you'll allow me to read it. You've watched this far. I'm not done, but if you like these videos and want to see more, please hit the subscribe button, basically. I've been trying to get to 100,000 subscribers for a long time, and if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe. 50% of the people watching this are not subscribed. So if you like hearing about the case and you want to hear more, I'm going to continue doing these over the next few days. And yeah, if you watch the 9-minute mark, thank you so much, first of all. And hopefully you would be willing to subscribe to help me hit my goal of 100,000 subs. And it looks like if we do as many subs as we did at the last video, we will hit that 90,000 goal before the end of 2022. And then we'll smash through 100K in 2023. Back at it, though. That's enough promo time from Destin. Here we go. The FTC's wildest supposition is that Activision content would be available on subscription and cloud gaming services if not for the merger. The FTC alleges that the transaction would harm Xbox's competitors for multi-game subscription and cloud gaming services because Activision might otherwise one day make its content available to those companies. These allegations are not only facially speculative and conclusionary, these are new words for me, they are entirely divorced from the facts. Activision's aversion to multi-game subscription and cloud gaming is widely known in the industry and is supported by ample testimony and evidence in the investigative records in this case. Their own testimony, the testimony that the FTC has from Bobby Kotick says there is no way we would ever go on a subscription service. We have no incentive to do so. Everybody's buying our game for $70. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but like he said, no, we wouldn't come to multi-game subscription services. They have that testimony, and then they still tried to make the case that it could have happened. No, it wouldn't. It never would have happened. The only plausible but-for scenario here is that Activision's new releases would not be available on subscription or cloud gaming services at all absent the transaction, meaning that Xbox's plans to bring Activision games to subscription and cloud can only be viewed as output enhancing and overwhelmingly pro-competitive. If your competitor has Call of Duty day and date, isn't that a good thing for the industry? Because that means Sony's going to have to figure out a way to compete with that. Maybe bring back Killzone. Maybe bring back some of those dormant IPs. They bought Bungie for a reason, right? They bought Bungie because they're going to make more online experiences. And if they have answers to Call of Duty, like Destiny 2, that's competitive. And those, like, I think Activision made a really good point there. A theory premised on the notion that Xbox can withhold from its competitors something they never would have had access to in the first place reeks of desperation and is destined for failure. They're saying the FTC reeks of desperation and is destined for failure. Whoa. Wow. Okay. That was the one where I'm like, this is spicy. Anyway, second, the FTC's assertion that Call of Duty games are a powerful influence on platform adoption is baseless, contrived, and lacking in any legal significance. Courts have long held that a vertical merger can only cause anti-competitive harm when the acquired input is essential. Call of Duty is a popular and successful game franchise, but it is far from being essential or even a powerful influence on consumer behavior, as the FTC contends. I mean, it's a pretty substantial game. I'm a little surprised for them to not just be like, yeah, it's like, that's one that I think it would be harder to make the case for, that Call of Duty isn't a powerful influence. Essential, sure. You can make the argument that no, it's not essential because a game like Fortnite can come along. But powerful influence, absolutely. Indeed, no game or franchise is important enough to make or break a gaming platform. New hit games developed by small studios regularly skyrocket to success seemingly out of nowhere. In particular, China-based gaming companies have been aggressively expanding in the US by investing in US gaming companies. Tencent's 40% stake in Epic Games, developer of Fortnite, and funding startup studios, all while enjoying protected access to the largest revenue opportunity in gaming at home in China. If Xbox were to cut off any of its platform competitors from Call of Duty, gamers using those platforms would simply move to alternative games instead. Like, the argument is, if you take Call of Duty off of PlayStation, everybody's going to move to Xbox. They're like, no, they're just going to play Apex or Fortnite or PUBG or whatever they end up wanting to play. Sony literally, this was a really good point. I put a note on it. What's more, Sony has many high quality existing games and an unrivaled war chest of IP spanning movies, television, and music, upon which it can draw to develop even more games and franchises. If Xbox were to remove Call of Duty from PlayStation, Sony has more than enough weapons in its arsenal to continue to compete effectively. Part of the reason Sony was able to get Spider-Man easier on their platform is because Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man, and I believe they still do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is a Sony-owned thing. A lot of people call out Xbox for not allowing, I believe it was Insomniac, to make a licensed game at the time. Admittedly a mistake. But who is that easier for? How do I phrase this? It's much easier for Sony to do that than it is for Microsoft to go through the legality issues of bringing Spider-Man to Xbox. Microsoft has instead said we'll spend $69 billion and just buy Activision outright to rectify that mistake. Here's the thing about all of this at the end of the day. Activision wanted to sell. Microsoft said we'll buy you. They want to be a company that's together. And the FTC is trying to stop that. Now, if Microsoft was buying Sony, I think that would be bad. That would be too big of a purchase. But Microsoft buying Activision, and yes, Call of Duty is a huge franchise that makes a ton of money for Activision currently and in the future Microsoft. I have less of an issue of that because when you start counting the IPs, intellectual properties available to Sony and available to Microsoft, this puts them on an even playing field. Microsoft would still be behind by about 2 IPs. Sony, it's somewhere in there, because there's stuff in development. So somebody corrected me. They said, actually, it's 120 IPs for Microsoft and 121 for Sony. And I'm like, okay, the point is that they would have a large playing field in which to decide, well, what do we bring back? Do we remaster the original Call of Duties? How do we create value adds now that we have all these companies? And I will give the naysayers this. Microsoft has a management issue with their studios, and they need to figure out that cadence. That is priority number 1 once this deal goes through. And I made a video all about that and being critical about that. But let's continue reading the document. Third, the FTC's made-for-litigation markets defy economic reality. The FTC has invented highly gerrymandered relevant product markets, including a high-performance console market limited to Xbox and PlayStation consoles, as well as individual markets for multi-game subscriptions and cloud gaming in an attempt to support its conclusionary theories of harm. The FTC is pulling stuff out of thin air and making up terms as they go along. They made up the high-performance console. What? So there's only 2 of those on the market? How do you define? You didn't even define that term. And here's where they really get them good. But even a cursory view of well-established facts demonstrates that these markets are entirely artificial. For example, the concept of a high-performance console market that excludes the Nintendo Switch is patently ridiculous. Nintendo competes directly with PlayStation and Xbox, offering many of the same games and targeting the same gamer demographics. Just because the Nintendo Switch is cheaper and has older components in it doesn't mean that it's not a high-performance console. The idea that having like tiers of consoles and only PlayStation and Xbox are the only 2 that you can look at, like the Steam Deck is a high performance console, the Nintendo Switch is a high performance console, the Series S is a high performance console. And it's interesting that everybody likes to poo-poo on the Xbox Series S until the FTC is using it as an example of a high performance console. Oh, I thought it was crap. I thought the Series S isn't high performance enough. But when it makes your case to stop Xbox from purchasing Activision, all of a sudden, oh yeah, that thing's too powerful. Okay. Then we got to get the other consoles in there too. And that's the point that Activision's making there. Nintendo competes directly with PlayStation and Xbox. Different strategies of competing for consumer spend, like the Switch's innovative mobile capability, do not define a separate relevant market, despite the FTC's misguided attempts to claim otherwise. Just because the Nintendo Switch kind of gums up your argument doesn't mean you can write it off as though it's not a competitor. The whole argument, they actually said something along the lines of the FTC or Microsoft just wants PlayStation to be like Nintendo. Nintendo is one of the most successful companies in the industry. Sony only recently surpassed them in terms of profit and revenue, I believe. So the idea that Sony could, become hugely successful and profitable and still be on top, that's a terrible argument. Continuing on. I don't think this might have to be 2 videos. We're only on page 5. The FTC's alleged relevant multi-game subscription and cloud gaming markets are similarly unfounded. Multi-game subscription services do not exist in a market unto themselves, but rather are simply another way for gamers to pay for and access games. The investigative record is chock full of evidence that gamers frequently switch between multi-game subscription and other methods of purchasing and downloading games. People buy stuff in different ways. Indeed, Activision's aversion to subscription is driven in no small part by the substantial cannibalization effect that multi-game subscriptions have on full game sales, i.e. gamers can directly substitute game purchases for subscription access. I didn't buy High on Life because I'm subscribed to Game Pass. But people do purchase those games. Like Game Pass is still a service that converts to sales, but not everybody does that. So the idea that people only buy games one way or another way, it's not true. And they're calling them out on that. The FTC's contrived cloud gaming market suffers a similar flaw. Cloud gaming is simply a new and still lacking in technological capability, commercial feasibility, and user adoption gaming feature that aims to offer a different way to access content, not a separate market. Courts regularly reject highly artificial, deliberately drawn markets such as those put forward here, and this case will prove no exception. That is what they had to say in their opening statement. That is just the first 6 pages of a 35-page document, and I have a lot more to go over. So I'm going to break here because I know this video is going to be like an hour long if I just read the whole thing in one. So I'm going to separate this into another one. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't subscribe earlier and you like this video, please subscribe now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the members. Still need to update this list with the new members. Thank you for supporting this channel. I post all these videos with no ads for members, so if you want to become one, click that join button right down there. I'm going to get out of here. We're going to finish this document, and there's a whole lot more that I want to go over about Activision. In the meantime, if you want to see what Microsoft said, which was a little less spicy, but still pretty spicy, you should check it out here, and I'll catch you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.